Welcome back to the channel. Today we're discussing a major development in the Jeffrey Epstein case that is once again dominating headlines and raising serious questions about transparency, accountability, and the limits of government disclosure. Members of Congress were recently granted access to millions of previously unreleased documents connected to Epstein, and their reactions have sparked renewed public debate. In this video, we're going to break down what lawmakers say they saw, why so much of the material remains redacted, what legal and political issues are involved, and what this could mean moving forward. Let's get into it. The limited congressional review of approximately 2.7 million Epstein-related documents represents one of the most significant transparency moments in this long-running and deeply disturbing case. According to lawmakers who participated in the review, the documents were made available inside a secure Department of Justice facility under controlled conditions, with access restricted to designated computers and a structured digital interface. The sheer scale of the archive immediately stood out. Millions of files spanning communications, investigative notes, internal memos, and supporting materials were organized in a way that reportedly required batch numbers and targeted searches to locate specific records. Lawmakers described the process as complex and time-constrained, suggesting that meaningful review would require far more time and technical assistance than what was available during their session. One of the central concerns expressed publicly was the extent of redactions. Several lawmakers stated that a substantial percentage of the documents they viewed remained heavily blacked out, with some estimating that 70 to 80% of certain files were redacted. Under federal law, redactions are permitted to protect the identities of victims, safeguard ongoing investigations, and prevent the release of sensitive personal data. However, the controversy arises from claims that some redactions may go beyond those legally justified boundaries. Specifically, lawmakers allege that certain adult names, including individuals described as potential co-conspirators, were obscured without clear explanation. It is important to emphasize that the presence of a name in investigative material does not establish criminal guilt. Investigative files often contain references to individuals who were interviewed, mentioned, or connected in various ways without necessarily being charged. Still, when lawmakers publicly state that some redactions appear inconsistent with transparency laws, the issue becomes not just legal but political and institutional. The debate centers on whether the Department of Justice is fully complying with the intent of legislation designed to bring greater openness to the Epstein investigation. Some members of Congress suggested that portions of the documents may have been redacted earlier during internal FBI reviews before being transferred into the system presented for congressional access. If that is accurate, then lawmakers may have been reviewing documents already altered under prior standards, rather than freshly evaluated under the more recent transparency framework. That distinction matters because it could mean that compliance with disclosure laws is technically occurring, while the substantive level of openness remains limited. Beyond the redaction issue, lawmakers describe documents referencing an alleged international network. According to their public statements, communications within the files referenced individuals in multiple countries and suggested coordination beyond U.S. borders. These descriptions align with earlier court findings that Epstein maintained international travel patterns and global contacts. However, it is essential to approach such claims carefully. Investigative documents can include allegations, witness statements, and unverified claims that require corroboration. The fact that lawmakers observed references to foreign contacts does not automatically confirm the scope or criminal liability of those individuals. Nonetheless, the characterization of the materials as describing a broader network reinforces long-standing public suspicion that Epstein did not operate alone. Another element of controversy involves Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's convicted associate. Reports indicate that she participated in certain proceedings while also invoking her Fifth Amendment rights in others. The Fifth Amendment protects individuals from self-incrimination, and its invocation is a constitutional right rather than an admission of wrongdoing. However, political tension emerged when her attorney publicly suggested that she would be willing to provide fuller testimony in exchange for clemency. Clemency is an executive power, and discussions surrounding it can quickly become politically sensitive. Lawmakers from both parties have questioned whether any arrangement, formal or informal, would be appropriate given the gravity of the crimes associated with the case. The optics of negotiations involving convicted individuals tied to high-profile scandals inevitably fuel speculation, even when no agreement has been finalized. From a broader institutional perspective, the current controversy highlights a recurring tension in democratic governance, the balance between transparency and due process. On one hand, the public has a legitimate interest in understanding the full scope of criminal networks, particularly when powerful individuals may be implicated. On the other hand, the justice system must protect victims, preserve ongoing investigations, and avoid defaming individuals who have not been formally charged. Achieving both goals simultaneously is extremely difficult. Excessive secrecy undermines public trust, while premature disclosure risks violating rights and compromising prosecutions. The Epstein case sits precisely at that intersection. The technological dimension also deserves attention. Managing 2.7 million documents is not merely a political challenge, but a logistical one. Digital indexing, search functionality, and classification protocols determine how effectively oversight can occur. If lawmakers cannot easily navigate the system, identify unredacted versions, or cross-reference related materials, oversight becomes symbolic rather than substantive. Transparency in the digital age requires not just releasing documents, but ensuring they are meaningfully accessible. Otherwise, volume itself becomes a barrier to accountability. Public reaction to these developments has been intense. Social media platforms amplify fragments of information rapidly, often without context. Claims about hidden names or alleged cover-ups can spread faster than official clarifications. This dynamic places additional pressure on institutions to communicate clearly and proactively. Silence or vague explanations tend to increase suspicion, even if procedural compliance is technically occurring behind the scenes. At the same time, it is crucial to maintain analytical discipline. Lawmakers' descriptions of what they saw represent interpretations based on limited review windows. Without full public access to the documents, independent verification remains impossible. Responsible analysis requires distinguishing between confirmed judicial findings, legislative commentary, and speculation. Epstein was convicted of serious crimes, and Maxwell was also convicted for her role. Those facts are established. What remains uncertain is the extent to which additional individuals may face legal exposure based on the contents of the remaining files. That determination depends on prosecutorial review, evidentiary standards, and ongoing investigative work. The political implications are equally significant. Epstein's associations spanned multiple sectors, including business, academia, and politics. Any disclosure that references prominent figures will inevitably intersect with partisan narratives. Some may frame the issue as institutional corruption. Others may emphasize procedural caution. The risk is that transparency efforts become entangled in political strategy rather than focused on objective accountability. For the justice system to maintain credibility, decisions about disclosure must appear consistent regardless of political affiliation or social status. Unequal treatment or even the perception of it can damage public confidence more than the underlying scandal itself. Looking ahead, the next phase likely involves further congressional hearings and potential demands for expanded disclosure. Lawmakers may request that the Department of Justice reevaluate prior redactions under updated standards. They may also seek detailed explanations regarding how documents were processed, categorized, and transferred. The outcome will depend on legal interpretation, executive discretion, and public pressure. Ultimately, this moment represents more than a document review. It reflects a broader test of institutional trust. When cases involve extreme misconduct and powerful connections, citizens expect clarity. They want assurance that justice operates independently of influence. Whether the current process satisfies that expectation remains to be seen. Transparency is not simply about releasing information. It is about demonstrating fairness, consistency, and accountability in how that information is handled. As this story develops, the key questions remain. Will additional names be lawfully disclosed? Will redactions be revisited? Will new charges emerge? Or will the controversy center primarily on process rather than prosecution? Until comprehensive review is completed and official determinations are made, definitive conclusions would be premature. What is clear is that the Epstein case continues to resonate because it symbolizes deeper concerns about power, exploitation, and institutional oversight. The coming months will likely determine whether this latest document release leads to substantive revelations or intensifies debate over transparency standards. For now, lawmakers' statements have ensured that the issue remains in the national spotlight, and the demand for answers shows no sign of fading.